So it all started in 1492. Three events happened. The Columbus sailed to America, and that gave the Europeans access to a tremendous amount of wealth. And in 1492, the last stronghold of Islam, Gharnata, was lost. And basically the reconquest of Spain, Islamic Spain, was completed. And the Europeans got access to a huge, tremendous treasure of knowledge from the Islamic civilization. Books on every subject, all that were been, because the Muslims were very eclectic. They took knowledge from wherever they could find it. So in the Islamic libraries, you had books from Greek philosophy and of Chinese and of Egyptians. All of the knowledge in the world that was there, they had. So these three events happened in 1492. The third event was the most interesting one, not noticed. Rodrigo Borgia. He purchased the papacy. He became the Pope by paying money for it. This was a sin according to, of course, Catholicism. But this is just like, you purchase ministry, you purchase things. So just like that. Being the Pope was a very powerful position, and so he paid money to bribe the people who were going to be in the electoral college. There was an electoral college which used to meet, and they would vote on who would be the next Pope, and basically he paid enough money to enough people to make sure that he would get elected. And he was elected. And after you become Pope, then you choose a name for yourself, and he chose the name Alexander. And since previously there had been 5 Alexanders, so he was called Alexander the Sixth. Now, in my essay on European transition to secular, he was a really corrupt Pope, and his people have said he was the most corrupt Pope in the history of all the popes, although there had been many corrupt popes before him. He was, like many others, openly sinful conduct. They would have wild parties, women, wine, everything, and in the open. It was public. What they used to do was that there was the Catholic religion had this thing called confession. Everybody had to go and confess all their sins to the priest. This was one of the things that was banned in the Protestant religion, because that was one of the keys to the power of the Catholic Church. They knew everything which everybody had done. For the other people, some of the people used to conceal their sins, but if you revealed your sins, then you could be bribed. And what they did was they did it very officially, theologically. They didn't say that, okay, I'll tell everybody. They said, okay, since you have done this sin, you have to do this penitence, this tawbah, and this is what you have to do. You have to fast for 60 days, and you do this and that, and it made it very difficult. So, on the other hand, there is another way. You can buy an indulgence. So the church could sell indulgences. Said, okay, we forgive the sins because, and of course, this was also not done as bribery. This was done that if you make a donation in charity to help the poor, then just standard theology, you do a good deed, it will cancel your bad deed. So here is an indulgence, you pay $1,000 to the church, and your sin will be forgiven. So on the surface, the cover story is good, but the reality was different. So they started using this to raise money for the church, and then to build luxurious churches, Michelangelo and all of these things. These were any grand buildings, very, very magnificent, and they're selling and buying things which were. So this led to a lot of unrest and discontent. And basically Martin Luther came up with these 1995 theses in 1571, which he said basically 95 points on which he thought that the Catholic Church was doing wrong things. So in 1521, there was the Edict of Worms, in which Martin Luther was excommunicated and said that everything he says is wrong, and anybody who listens to him will be put out of the church. But but now, because of widespread popular discontent against the church, previously when the church excommunicated people, then that put them in real trouble. They were out of society. Even there is a story of a king of England who was excommunicated, and then he walked to the Rome on barefoot to ask for his pardon. There was so much power that the popes used to have. But in this time, because there was popularness, people said, no, the Pope is wrong and Luther is right, and this led to the creation of the Protestant Church. And then there was huge fights between Protestants and Catholics, and there was extreme cruelty. You guys are watching the Game of Thrones, in which there is the Red Wedding. And this is actually an event that took place in France when the Queen of France decided that she would make peace between the Protestants and the Catholics. And so I think she had a daughter, and there was the Prince of Nantes who was a Protestant. And she said, okay, you come and I will marry you to my daughter, and we will make peace between the Protestants and the Catholics. And when the wedding party arrived, then they gave the signal, and all over the country, all the Protestants were massacred by their Catholics. And this whole party was also killed. I don't remember whether the prince himself was killed or not, but anyway, pretty disastrous. So that was actually the mark. After that, the Protestants said that these Catholics, they are spawn of devil, and anything you can do to them is permissible. Before that, there had been some compromise, and they are just not human beings. And the same thing was true of Catholics. The Catholics thought that these other people are devils. So there was bitter fighting all over Europe, and this led to general public disenchantment with religion in Europe. And this idea that they learned from their history, that religion is just a cause of conflict and wars, this is still present. The religion is the root of all warfare and conflict and fighting among people. And we should never talk about religion in public, because it will only lead to fights. And this is all part of current modern European mindset. And today, when we study, we also learn that religion is the source of warfare, without understanding that this is actually based on European history. In our history, this is not the truth. Our history is very different. In our history, religion has been a source of peace and prevention of warfare. But today, Europeans will say that religion, even though if you look at the 20th century, all of the wars are being fought for money. This is the capitalist wars. The Iraq was bombed for oil, and Libya, and there's no, and they have been using religion to create wars, and ISIS, etc., Taliban. These were all funded by the CIA because in the East, religion is a powerful binding source. In the West, there's only one religion, that is money. So basically, it is not religion which is the root of warfare, it's the people who seek power. And when they want power, they use whatever can be used to move the people. If it is religion, great. If it is money, great. Use whatever you want. They have no, contrary to our own, because we are used to thinking in religion, so we say that, okay, they are calling Islam terrorists, so they hate Islam and they are doing the crusades. Actually, they have no hate or love for Islam. When Islam is useful to them, then they love Islam, like in the time of the Taliban. The Taliban were heroes against the Russians, and you have pictures of big Taliban with big Western leaders. And then when the Taliban became an obstacle in their path, then Islam became bad. So it's only the religion of money. The religion itself has no significance to them. So anyway, this is the real story of how the Europeans lost their faith. Doesn't have to do with their learning how to reason. It has to do with the fact that religion caused a lot of damage to their society. And this is something which we Muslims should take note of, that today we are doing the same things. The Barelvi is fighting the Deobandi, and everybody, we are fighting each other over small religious differences, and this is what leads the people away from religion. So now the next consequence of this was very surprising. Loss of faith, loss of belief in God leads to trauma, leads to a huge loss of confidence. Who am I? What am I? Is this just all accident? Is my life completely meaningless? One of the things that they did as a result of this trauma is shock, was that they rejected the heart as a source of knowledge. Now you and I, we trust our heart. We say that yes, I think this is good, I should do it. My heart tells me that this is right. I don't argue. You see, if there's somebody who's starving, people are hurt, I go out because my heart says, my heart contains love for all human beings. This is what Allah Ta'ala has planted in the hearts. So if I see somebody is suffering, I try to console them. This is natural. Now, suppose I put in my head that here is this person, he is suffering, he is dying. If he dies, I will inherit his wealth. Or he is dying, nobody is seeing, it's just the two of us, and in his wallet there is $1,000. So my heart tells him that, look, I should help him. But my head, it says that you will benefit if he dies, so let him die. So they said that the heart has deceived us. The heart told us that there was God, but there is no God. So from now on, I will not trust anything my heart tells me. So the whole social science of the West is built on a heartless idea. The Homo economics, he has no heart. We have been studying the ultimatum game and how the economists are completely baffled. Why do human beings cooperate? Now the question that I am asking is, why are economists puzzled? That is because the economist theory has no heart. According to economic theory, all humans are heartless. So then when human beings care for each other, they are generous, they give to each other. In the ultimatum game, they are puzzled. This man without a heart, how come he is behaving like someone who has a heart? And they have all sorts of theories to explain human behavior without heart. The key is the statement of Descartes that I think, therefore I am. Now you see, when I think about my own existence, then my beating heart already tells me that I exist. I don't need to think about my thoughts. But they said no, the testimony of the heart cannot be accepted. We have to use reason. So basically this is where logical positivism comes on. The positivism says that there are only two sources of knowledge. One is the observations, what we can touch and see. And this is basically, this comes from the trauma of loss of faith. I cannot trust my heart. My heart tells me many things. My heart tells me what you are thinking about me. Now this is something which is completely unobservable, because I cannot ever look into your heart. But still, my heart can feel that other people love me and respect me, or that they don't like me. Both of these things my heart is able to tell. But my reason, my observation cannot tell, because I cannot look into the heart of the other person. So the logical positivism said that the only thing we will trust in is what we can touch and we can see. That is the positive part. That is the objective reality. And then what we can use our logic to derive from that, that's also knowledge. And we will only trust what is certain. We will not believe in guesses, in conjectures, because they can deceive us. So if I guess, I think that there is God, I have no proof, then I don't accept this. This is again part of trauma, because all the time we are operating on knowledge which is not certainty. We think that this will happen and we will. So tomorrow we think that the prices might go up, so we say, okay, let's purchase some things today. All the time we are acting on guesses, on uncertainties. Life is uncertain. In fact, this was one of the big differences between Keynes and classical economists and neoclassical economists. Neoclassical economists, they all believe in rational expectations. The future can be predicted. Keynes said the future is fundamentally uncertain. You can't say anything about it. So if you can't say anything about what will happen tomorrow, then all your arch-gauch modeling is useless, because arch-gauch modeling is trying to tell you how much uncertainty there is in the future. Now if I say that it's infinite, you cannot calculate it, anything can happen, then modeling is useless. Then there are other methods that you use, and we use how to cope with radical uncertainty. So this was all the product of trauma, that the Europeans started to look for a philosophy of science, and that would prove that all scientific knowledge is certain. Scientific knowledge, they said, is based on observations and logic alone. There is no emotion involved, no intuition involved, no guesswork. And the scientific knowledge leads to objective facts which are certain and which are true for every place in all time. And they said that objective knowledge is valuable and subjective knowledge is useless. And this is what we are taught. The positive is something which is knowledge, and normative, what you feel, what you think, this is your individual affair. Anybody can do whatever they want. Now actually, as I have been saying, in Islam, knowledge teaches us how to live our lives. But how to live our lives is necessarily individual. It is different from me and different from you. It's necessarily subjective. So in Islam, subjective knowledge is the most important type of knowledge. And objective knowledge, something everybody knows, that's not so important. That's not so essential for me to know how I can live my life. Who Asad Zaman is, who Faisal Azim is, that is not objective. So this is again all a product of trauma, of loss of faith. Then when objective knowledge is important, then human beings' lives don't matter. And then the question of meaningless lives arises. So basically, these are the historical forces that led to the emergence of logical positivism. And actually, for a long time, for centuries, they have been trying to say that science is based solely on observation and logic, but they could not do it, because science also has theories about unobservable things like atoms and electrons and gravity. All of these things are unobservable. So there were some philosophical developments which are complicated, and I have explained in some other papers of mine, that that allowed them to say that, okay, science is really based only on observations and logic. So the counterpart methodology of this is the methodology of science that emerged in economics, is called the axiomatic deductive methodology. So basically, theory of knowledge is that we observe facts. This is completely certain because it's out there. Everybody can see it. I can touch it, feel it. So that's like the axioms. That's something everybody knows. That's certain knowledge. And then we use logic to build on that. And so again, that is certain. So the axiomatic deductive methodology of economics says that there are certain axioms which everybody knows for true. These don't need to be checked against reality because they are derived from objective, concrete facts. And then there is deductions from axioms. Again, there is no possible mistake. So when we get to our theorem, we never need to check whether or not it's true, because it is based on solid methodology. So See, there are two types of methods. There is the empirical method. Here is something that may be true, so I go out and check to see if it is true. And then there's the axiomatic deductive. So I prove the Pythagorean theorem by logical method. I don't go out and test it to see if it works or not. In fact, if somebody draws a triangle and says that the theorem does not work on this, I say that you have made the drawing wrong because the theorem cannot be false. So basically, this is how the economists also work. They say that our theories cannot be false. So they never check it against history. So logical positivism said that this is how science works, even though this was wrong. This is not how science works. Science works by looking at reality, and scientific hypotheses have to be tested against reality. They have to be modified. We have been discussing this, that how science works. Science looks at reality, makes a guess about how it works, tests this guess, and then if it finds it's wrong, as usually happens, then it modifies the guess. This is how science works. But this is not how positivists thought that science works. Positive had a different theory of science. They said that science works by axiomatic. Why? Because the positivists needed to prove that science is certain. This was due to the trauma of loss of faith. If the positivists had been trying to understand what real science is, they would have understood that this is not science. But the positivists were out to prove that science leads to certainty. And if you look at the real science, that okay, we look at observations, we make a guess may be wrong, then, and usually it is. I mean, this is actually what Thomas Kuhn, he wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions in 1960, and this is what he said, that when you look at the history of science, you find that science is not like this. It's not axiomatic deductive. You find that scientists are constantly making guesses, and then they are proven wrong. And so you make a complete change. This is what he called a revolution. You have an axiom, and then you find the axiom is wrong. You come to a different axiom. It's a revolution. So logical positivism was wrong understanding of science. But now the psychology of the West comes in. It became very, very popular, and it became widely accepted. Everybody started believing in positivism. Why? Because it fulfilled a deep psychological need. It allowed them to make their science into a religion. It allowed them to believe that science will solve all our problems one day. And they needed that because they didn't have any religion. Otherwise, religion solves all our problems. But if they don't have religion, then they have nothing. So they said, okay, science will be our new religion. And logical positivism proves that science is the only truth and nothing other than truth, and it's always certain.